Okay, we're going to move away from France and move into the Germanic area and talk about the Rottgen Pieta. This is made of wood, and it's 1300 to 1325, and it's pretty small. It's only about a foot high, which is 12 inches. And so the troubles of the war, plague, famine, social strife, all of this started to appear in religious art in this particular period, in the Gothic period. And so the emphasis on human suffering, expressive exaggeration, intense emotionalism, elicits a response, an emotional response. When we look at this, it is intended to elicit that type of emotion. Pietà just means compassion in Italy, or Italian. And in this image, Christ is stunted. His body is distorted. He's a wreck. He's stiff in death, covered with blood from the gushing wound in the side of his ribs there. He is emaciated. He's showing that he led a life of hunger and suffering. And Mary's image, she's anguished. Her head is oversized, and she looks twisted in unbearable grief. She appears to be angry and confused, and doesn't seem to know that her son is going to rise from the dead. This is supposed to remind the viewers that her suffering was real, and our suffering today is in no comparison to what Christ went through, or what she went through as his mother. So this is a new Christ divinity. We're not used to seeing this image like this. If we see a Pietà, we think of the Renaissance, and we think of Michelangelo's beautiful Pietà out of marble, or we even think of perhaps the view from the Schatz Cathedral, where Christ, the very mature-looking Christ, sitting on Mary's lap. And this is a very different image. We're not used to seeing this. But you will see this type of anguish, or, I don't know, I don't want to say violence, but it's definitely different from what we've seen in France when we get to the Northern Renaissance. We're up in that area. All right, so let's shift focuses to the Chapel of Henry VII in Westminster Abbey in London, England, from 1503 to 1519. So our theme is innovations and experimentation, and this is Westminster Abbey, which would have been the setting, or is the setting, for every coronation since 1066, and for numerous royal occasions, including 16 royal weddings. So if you saw the most recent royal wedding, you would have seen the inside of Westminster Abbey. So this is a view of the nave down Westminster, and the Westminster Abbey is a royal peculiar. It is under the jurisdiction of the dean and chapter, subject only to the sovereign, and not to any archbishop or bishop. The abbey survived for 2 centuries until the middle of the 13th century, when King Henry III, decided to rebuild it in the new Gothic style. So you can see that this has all the Gothic elements with the pointed arches. And you can't see the stained glass window from here, but you can definitely see the elements of Gothic here. So this little chapel, which is here in the pink here, is added on later. And this image is a view of what the chapel looks like on the inside. And this is from Henry VII in 1516. And so this is considered, or called, the perpendicular architecture style of Gothic. So it's this late Gothic period called the perpendicular. So Henry's obviously spent a great deal of money decorating the inside of this little chapel. It distinguishes its perpendicular style quite from the previous, what you had seen in the actual Westminster. This is an English linear play of rib vaulting, where you can see this looks like a fan, but there's rib vaults underneath there. But you've got that fan over the top, and it's very, very decorative. And this is very unique to England. So you wouldn't see any of this in Germany or France or Italy. It's very unique to England. And so you see these fan vaults are radiating out and forming this fan-like, element or image. And you see also these large pendants hanging down here, here, here. The vaults look as if they're some sort of organic mass has hardened and processed in its melting stage or forming stage. Again, you see this intricate tracery, which is very Gothic, resembling lace, overwhelms the cones hanging from this ceiling. The chapel represents the dissolution of structural Gothic into this very, very decorative, fancy Gothic. The architects released the Gothic style's original lines from their function and multiplied them into these uninhibited, theatrical, perpendicular style. The reason I add this is because there's questions that perhaps might call you towards the perpendicular. There is no image in the College Board that asks you to know of the perpendicular, so I'm showing you what that is in case there's a multiple choice question that asks you to identify the perpendicular in the Gothic phase.